Yes. Okay. So in the last class, we looked at the hypothalamic control of the pituitary gland, and we saw that the hypothalamus is both structurally and functionally very closely related to the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus controls the anterior pituitary gland function by secreting hormones, which are called as, answer.
Hypophysiotropic.
They are called as hypophysiotropic hormones. So these hormones are basically dash and dash hormones. These hormones are basically dash and dash hormones. Huh?
Secretory and inhibitory.
Inhibitory is correct. Secretory, na?
Releasing.
Yeah, releasing and inhibiting hormones. Okay. The connection between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary is a dash connection.
Vascular connection.
Vascular connection.
They are connected by blood vessels, so it is called as a vascular connection. So what is that connection? We call it as hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. So you have capillary plexus being formed on the median eminence. The median eminence capillaries will join, blood vessels will come down on the pituitary stalk, again break up into capillaries, secondary capillary plexus on the anterior pituitary gland. So you have a system of blood vessels beginning in capillaries and ending in capillaries without passing through the heart. So such a system of blood vessels is called as a portal system. It is connecting the hypothalamus to the hypophyseal gland. Pituitary gland is also called as hypophyseal gland. That is why this is called as hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system. Okay. So I also showed you that table, is it not? Where the secretion of the various anterior pituitary hormones and the nuclei from which they are coming. Okay. So if it is asked as a 5-mark question, or say it is asked as a 10 marks also, the 15 marks, this it's worth remembering the nucleus. So basically you have the paraventricular, preoptic and periventricular areas, and also the arcuate nucleus, which are secreting the various hypophysiotropic hormones. And this is a very important slide, which also tells about the target cell and which hormone from the anterior pituitary it is controlling. Okay, so it's worthwhile going through this slide at leisure. Then the connection between the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary is a dash connection.
Neural connection.
Neural connected by nerve fibers, and we call it as the hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. Okay, so for some reason, students will tell hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal tract. There's no portal word is not necessary to be used here. Okay, we can just say hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. Very important. The nerve fibers, the neurons from various nuclei secreting hypophysiotropic hormones end on the median eminence. They are called as something, whereas this one from the supraoptic and paraventricular ending on the posterior pituitary, these neurons are given another name. What are those names?
Magnocellular and parvocellular.
The first one between anterior, that median eminence, and this thing, that is the parvocellular. They are small diameter neurons, whereas this is the large diameter magnocellular neurons. Okay, so this is something you should know, right? And then there's a very nice slide, one of my favorite in this when you talk about intracellular communication, right? So cells, if at all they have to perform this function of maintaining homeostasis, cells can't just function however they want. Okay, even in a democracy, just because democracy is there, people can't behave however they want, especially at the time of this pandemic. They have to talk to each other and they have to come to some conclusion, and then they have to go in a direction which is in the best interest of the country. So similarly, the cells cannot do whatever they want inside the body. They have to talk to each other. They have to be controlled by other systems, and they have to work in such a way that whatever they are functioning is for the ultimate benefit of the human body, that homeostasis is maintained. Okay, so this is one way by which the nervous system is controlling the activity of the other organs in the body. The first two will tell you how the muscle function is controlled. Okay, so first one is the skeletal muscle. The second one is by the autonomic nervous system, where the smooth and cardiac muscle is controlled. The second, third, and fourth are showing how nervous system will control endocrine system, how it is controlling. Just an example, there are many other examples. Okay, so how the nervous system will control the regulation of renin and the function of the adrenal medulla. And the last two are how it is also pouring secretions, hormones into the blood vessels. And these secretions, hormones are just like the classical hormones going in the target, going in the blood vessels and reaching the targets. Okay, so very nice slide, worth drawing in your free time and practicing this one, right? So we started our discussion on the anterior pituitary hormones. And I told you that this anterior, I'm sorry, the slides are all upside down for some reason. I don't know what is going on. How much ever I'm trying, they're not coming in order. And then I forgot the pen drive today. So my apologies, right? Anyway, so the posterior pituitary hormones, I told you one basic framework when it comes to any hormone, right? So if you have that checklist, if you remember that list and you go on filling it, your answer will be complete, right? Especially if that hormone is asked as a main question or for 5 marks. So you have one list of headings. You go on filling that heading using your common sense, using just sitting and thinking for 2 minutes before you start writing, filling it up. Then your answer is complete. So I gave you a checklist. So we'll just quickly run through the checklist before we start our discussion on this posterior pituitary hormones, right? So I told you that the posterior, any hormone, you can first write what you'll write about the hormone. First thing you have to write is source. From where is that hormone coming? Whether it is a classical endocrine gland or like in the case of epsilon natriuretic peptide, it is some other structure which is not generally known to be having an endocrine function. Okay, so you tell the source. The second thing you will tell is the structure, the chemical nature, is it not? So whether it is a protein or a peptide or a steroid hormone or whether it is an amine derivative. This is very important. If you know the structure, there are so many things you can write. So if you know it is a protein hormone, you can blindly write that there is transcription, post-transcriptional modification, translation, and post-translation. Any hormone, protein, or peptide, it will be synthesized in the big form, pre-pro hormone. So then that hormone is then taken into the Golgi apparatus. The leader sequence is there. Any protein, this is happening. So the pre part will go, and then the pro hormone is going into the Golgi apparatus. Once it goes into the Golgi apparatus, it is packaged in secretory vesicles. So when it is packaged in the secretory vesicles, the actual hormone is split from whatever remaining pro fragment is there. Say, for example, in the case of the hormones, two hormones which we are discussing, in the Golgi apparatus in the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei, prohormone is packaged into the secretory vesicles and then it is split. Say in the case of oxytocin, you have pro-oxytocin, pre-pro-oxytocin, pre part is gone. So you have pro-oxytocin. The pro-oxytocin is then split. The pro part is removed, any oxytocin. What is that pro part? It is neurophysin 1, one compound called as neurophysin 1. Whereas in the case of ADH or vasopressin, you have pro-vasopressin when it is entering into the Golgi apparatus. In the Golgi apparatus, in the secretory vesicles, the pro form and vasopressin are split. And what is the pro form in the case of vasopressin?
Neurophysin 2.
Neurophysin. And these secretory vesicles, in our discussion, what is happening, the special thing that is happening is they are transported along the axon by axoplasmic flow, and they are stored in the nerve endings which are present in the posterior pituitary. So what are these secretory vesicles called as? When you stain them, they appear
Herring's
bodies.
Herring's
they are called as Herring's bodies. Okay, so source of ADH, have to be little careful. You have to be little careful, especially posterior pituitary hormones. You have to be little careful. You can't say the source is posterior pituitary. You will be partly right. You will be also partly wrong. Tricky situation, especially in the case of the posterior pituitary hormones. Why am I making this statement that you will be partly right and partly wrong? Because they are secreted by the posterior pituitary, but they are not synthesized in the posterior. So what is the source? We have to split it up. They are synthesized in the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei of the hypothalamus. They are transported down the axoplasm, those vesicles, and in the posterior pituitary, they are stored. And on the appropriate stimulus, electrical activity is set up in these neurons, and they are going to be released. Okay, so source per se, if you say posterior pituitary, you are partly right. They are secreted from the posterior pituitary, but they are synthesized in the hypothalamus. At one point, you have to be careful when you are talking about the posterior pituitary hormones. Okay, so we told the source, we saw the chemistry. Then next, what do we talk about? We talk about the biosynthesis. Biosynthesis, I already told you. Biosynthesis is important. Receptors, any hormone to act on the target cell, the target cell must have receptors. And most often we see that hormones or neurotransmitters will have different actions on different cells. And how this is possible? Because there are different types of receptors. And those receptors are then linked to different kinds of molecules inside the cell, which helps in signal transduction and production of different second messengers. So we'll understand this when we this statement when we talk about the receptors for anterior ADH or vasopressin. So antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin, there are three types of receptors: V1A, V1B, and V2 receptor. The V1A receptor, we'll start with V2 first to cut the story short. Why I am starting with V2? This is the one which is most famous. This is the one which is present in the kidneys. It is a G protein coupled receptor. It is present in the cell membrane, obviously, because this oxytocin is a peptide. It cannot cross the cell membrane. All the receptors are present in the cell membrane. So in the kidneys, which cell it is present? V2 receptor. Yeah, you're correct. Who told that? Yeah, they are present on the principal cells in the cortical tubules and cortical collecting ducts. What is the other cell there in that area?
Intercalated cell.
Intercalated cell. What is the function of that intercalated cell? Where did you come across that intercalated cell?
Hydrogen ion secretions.
Yeah, in acid-base balance, you saw that it is actively secreting hydrogen ion and reabsorbing the potassium. Okay, so this intercalated cell is different. Principal cell is different. So in the V2 receptors, for our discussion, please remember the principal cells it acts on, and it will cause this type of action. I have another thing I show you maybe tomorrow. I don't know. I am not having time to prepare better slides. Okay. This one. So once the I think I'll go to another one. Yeah. So once the hormone ADH binds to its receptor. So this is a G protein coupled receptor. So you can see that alpha, beta, gamma, that is the G protein. So usually these three are together, three components. So these are heterotrimeric G proteins. Okay. So this alpha part will be combined to GDP. Once the ADH binds, a signal is given. This alpha part will exchange, it will leave GDP and take up GTP. Guanosine diphosphate it is having in the resting state. Once the hormone binds to it, it leaves off GDP and takes up GTP, guanosine triphosphate. It's the guanosine analog of, it is a guanosine analog of, what is the more famous one? Which is the other famous TP? Adenosine triphosphate. Okay. So GTP is the guanosine analog of ATP. So when see here you can see when this alpha part that is not shown, it splits up and it takes up the GTP. So this will go and stimulate the enzyme adenylyl cyclase. When adenylyl cyclase is stimulated, this will convert ATP into cyclic AMP. That cyclic AMP will activate an enzyme called as protein kinase. So that protein kinase enzyme will go and phosphorylate a preformed pool of aquaporin receptors which is present in these vesicles. So when the aquaporin 2 is phosphorylated, this gets inserted into the cell membrane by exocytosis. In the process of exocytosis, the aquaporin 2 channels are getting inserted. So once this happens, and if already the hyperosmotic medullary interstitial gradient is there, the water enters into the cell by the luminal surface, and via the basolateral membrane, it is going to go out via aquaporin 3 and 4 channels. Aquaporin 3 and 4 channels are always there. Aquaporin 3 and 4 channels are always there. It is the luminal membrane which may or may not have aquaporin 2 channels. If ADH acts, aquaporin channels are inside. If ADH is not there, aquaporin channels are not active. Okay. And after ADH is dissociating, again this is going to be taken back. These aquaporin channels which are inserted into the luminal membrane, once ADH finishes its action, it is going to be taken back. Okay. So this is how ADH acts via B2 receptors, which is G protein coupled. It is going to increase the intracellular cyclic AMP. If you have not understood all this, just remember, this you should remember. ADH receptors on the kidney in the principal cells are B2. The increased cyclic AMP. Ultimately, what happens? Water channels called as aquaporins are going to be inserted into the luminal membrane, which will increase the permeability of the luminal membrane to water. This part you should know. There is no escaping that. Okay. The other receptors are V1A and V1B. The V1A and V1B receptors, they will also cause activation of one type of G protein, which will increase the activity of an enzyme called as phospholipase C, PLC. So when phospholipase C is activated, there is going to be increased production of two compounds called as diacylglycerol and inositol triphosphate. This inositol triphosphate is the one which is going to go and act on the intracellular calcium stores. What are the intracellular calcium stores? Inside the cell, where is calcium stored?
Sarcoplasmic reticulum.
One more site where it is stored. System.
Calmodulin.
Calmodulin is a protein. It is not a store. Intracellular mitochondria. Okay, so two places where calcium is stored. One is the mitochondria. More commonly, it's stored in the endoplasmic reticulum. So this phospholipase C, once it causes production of inositol triphosphate, so that will cause increased calcium. Calcium will go and bind to calmodulin, and that will cause so many things happening. So where this V1A receptor is present, vascular smooth muscle. Even a receptor is present in the vascular smooth muscle. It is also present in the liver where it causes glycogenolysis. It is also V1B receptors are present in the anterior pituitary. Same thing, they will cause the secretion of ACTH. This you should. Three types of receptors for ADH: V1A, V1B, V2. V1A, V1B. Calcium is the second messenger. V2 receptors, kidneys. What is the second messenger for the V2 receptor?
Cyclic
Cyclic AMP.
G protein is not a second messenger. G protein is a link between the hormone and the biological response, other things. Okay, G protein is not, you should never say G protein as a second messenger. Second messengers, whenever they ask you examples, you should say cyclic AMP, cyclic GMP, calcium, inositol triphosphate, and diacylglycerol. Some people will say the messenger RNAs are also like a type of second messenger. It's clear so far? You want me to repeat anything? Shall I go on? Shall I move on? Raise your hands if I can move on. I'll carry on. Okay. So we looked at the source. There you should be careful. Synthesized in one part, secreted by another part. We looked at the chemistry. We looked at the receptors. We looked at the second messengers. We looked at the distribution of the receptors. What is remaining now? Most important. Physiological actions. Physiological actions of ADH. ADH causes the reabsorption of water in the kidneys. Which type of reabsorption? Facultative reabsorption of water. What is the other type of reabsorption of water? Obligatory.
obligatory.
That is happening in the proximity. What do you mean by obligatory?
Compulsory. Along with the solutes, it is reabsorbed.
One simple way of remembering the obligatory word: it must happen. Obligatory means it must happen. Facultative means it may or may not happen. If ADH is there, it will happen. If ADH is not there, facultative reabsorption will happen. Okay. So ADH acts on V2 receptors, principal cells, causes the facultative reabsorption of water. So that I already showed you the slide, is it not? Where it is acting and this how the aquaporin 2 channels are being installed. Okay. On the blood vessels, it is causing vasoconstriction. But it also acts on the heart, at other areas of the brain, which will inhibit the cardiovascular function. So there is not much change in the blood pressure. Okay, so it causes vasopressin. It causes vasoconstriction. That is why it is called as vasopressin. That is why it is also called as vasopressin. It is having a vasopressor action. Okay. Then I told you that there are some synthetic forms of ADH. What are the synthetic forms? By re-altering the amino acid, 9 amino acids there, by rearranging them, we could get one compound called as 1-D-amino 8-D arginine vasopressin. Okay, 1-D-amino 8-D arginine vasopressin. It is also called as DDAVP, or in simple terms, it is also called as desmopressin. And then there is one antibiotic called as demiclocycline, DEMECLOCYLIN, demiclocycline, CYCLIN. This will inhibit or block the action of this vasopressin on the kidneys. Okay. Metabolism. Next thing you have to remember about any hormone is metabolism. So, which are the two organs which are generally involved in the clearance or breakdown of any hormone or most of the substances? Liver and
Liver and
Kidney.
kidney.
liver and kidney. Okay. So it is broken down in the liver and kidneys and it is excreted out. And I told you in the last class that its half-life is very short. It is just 18 minutes. 18 minutes is the half-life. Okay. Then the next thing you should remember about any hormone is how is the regulation of, how is the hormone secretion regulated? What are the factors which regulate the secretion of that hormone? So general principles you can remember, and then in each specific case you have to go on being remembering the specific details. Hormone secretion are regulated in three ways. Any hormone secretion, you have neural regulation, you have hormone regulation, or you have hormone substrate or nutrient regulation. Okay, but the problem with this hormone which you're discussing is it is not regulating other hormone secretion. It is not regulating any substrate or nutrient. Then what regulates this hormone? The function of this hormone is it maintains the ECF volume and osmolality. Mainly, you should tell osmolality first. It's the first one to jump into action when there is any change in the osmolality. If there is hyperosmolarity in the descent, very quickly the changes are going to happen. Okay. So, even though this is summary, I thought I will put this first. Okay. So, you have some factors which are going to increase the secretion of vasopressin, and you have some other factors which are going to decrease the secretion of vasopressin. So, what are the factors which increase vasopressin secretion? Increased osmotic pressure, decreased blood volume, some other miscellaneous factors like pain, emotion, stress, exercise. Stress like surgery will cause increase in vasopressin secretion. Nausea and vomiting, angiotensin 2, and some compounds called as clofebrate and carbamazepine. Clofebrate is a lipid lowering agent. Previously it is used, I don't know, it is still used now. Carbamazepine is a drug which is used in neurology. It is an anti-epileptic and it is also used in various other psychiatric conditions and for relieving neurological pain and all that. So this is also one compound which will increase the vasopressin secretion. The factors which decrease vasopressin secretion are exactly opposite. First two. Decreased effective osmotic pressure, increased extracellular fluid volume, and alcohol. Okay. So we look at one experiment which was done. In rats, when 5 ml of blood, you just look at me, okay? In rats, when 5 ml of blood was removed and that caused hypovolemia, that hypovolemia was causing, stimulating the, there are some receptors which will monitor the volume of blood present in the body. Who will tell me? Where there is receptors?
Osmoreceptors.
Osmoreceptors.
Please listen to my question. There are some receptors which will monitor the volume of blood present in the body.
The low pressure receptors in atria.
Low pressure baroreceptors.
Yeah, I think Ruhi told the answer. So there are some low pressure baroreceptors. They are also called as cardiopulmonary receptors. Okay. No, not osmo. I'm talking about volume. Why did you go on telling osmo? Listen to my question. What are the receptors which are going to monitor the volume of blood present in the body? Volume. Okay, so what are these volume receptors? They are the low pressure baroreceptors. They are also called as cardiopulmonary receptors. They are the ones which are present in the pulmonary circulation and in the atria. So when the blood pressure falls, these receptors are going to send less number of impulses via the vagus, and or they start firing. Depends how you look at it. Ultimately, the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei are going to be when the blood pressure falls, they are firing increases. Okay, I'm sorry about that. When the blood volume falls, these low pressure baroreceptors, they are firing increases via the vagus descent nerves, and they are going to cause an increase in the electrical activity of this magnocellular neurons. That it's a phasic burst of signals, means it is not continuous. Suddenly there is a burst of signals, like electrical activity, then it stops. Then you can see here, see one burst and then stop, one burst and then stop. Okay, so this phasic activity says that there is a continuous prolonged secretion of ADH. Right? So that is volume. Then you have plasma osmolality. What is the normal plasma osmolality?
282
250 to 300
milliosmol.
milliosmoles.
Who told 250? That value patient would have died long back. Huh? Think before you answer. It is 285 milliosmoles. For the sake of convenience, when we discussed in countercurrent mechanism, we looked at it as 300 milliosmoles. Okay, so you can see that as the plasma osmolality goes on increasing, the ADH secretion goes on increasing. Okay, so this how the osmolality was increased. This in this experiment, they have infused hypertonic saline. So controlled hypertonic saline was infused in normal healthy human volunteers, and then they saw the ADH levels. So as the plasma osmolality increased because of the infusion of hypertonic saline, ADH secretion goes on increasing. So ADH, how this is happening? So when there is hyperosmolality, there are some receptors called as osmoreceptors. These osmoreceptors are there in the OVLT, organum vasculosum of lamina terminalis. They will shrink, okay, because of the hyperosmolality. When they shrink, they send an impulse to the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei, stimulating the magnocellular neurons. Electrical activity in the magnocellular neurons is going to increase, and there is going to be a release of this ADH. ADH will act on the kidneys, make the kidneys to reabsorb more of water, and when water is added, the hyperosmolarity gets diluted and it comes back. This is very important. Yeah. So I have less than a minute here. I'll come back in 5 minutes maybe. I'll come back in 5 minutes. 12:45. I'm going to be back. What are circumventricular organs?
Sir, part of the brain which doesn't have blood-brain barrier.
Which are present outside the blood-brain barrier.
The areas of the brain which are present outside the blood-brain barrier, they are called as circumventricular organs. Okay. So then one slide which is a comprehensive slide. You can take a quick screenshot. Okay, shall I start the class? Please raise your hands if I can start the class. Okay, right. So then we were discussing about the factors which control vasopressin secretion. Here you have to be a little careful, because it is not a regular neural regulation or hormonal regulation or substrate regulation. It's a totally different set of components here. So you have a decreased blood volume, increased osmotic pressure, pain, stress, emotions, nausea, vomiting, standing up, drugs like clofebrate and carbamazepine, and angiotensin 2, which are going to increase vasopressin secretion. And on the other side, you have decreased in osmotic pressure or increased ECF volume and alcohol, which are going to decrease the vasopressin secretion. Okay. So then we looked at the relationship between plasma osmolality and plasma osmolality and ADH secretion. So what type of relationship is this between the increasing plasma osmolality, ADH secretion goes on increasing? So what do you call this relationship as?
Directly proportional.
directly proportional. So this is a linear relationship. It's a straight line. It's a linear relationship. Okay, it's a straight line. Okay, but if you look at the relationship between the change in blood pressure, you'll see that it is a it's not a linear relationship, an inverse relationship, and this is how it is going, right? And this is the relationship between the ADH secretion and plasma volume. Okay, so the dashed line is showing as the plasma volume is changing by doing water deprivation, how the ADH secretion is going to increase. Okay, so if there is a fight between these two stimuli, if there is no change in osmolality but volume decreases, will ADH secretion increase? There is no change in osmolality, volume has decreased. ECF volume and blood volume has decreased. Will ADH secretion increase? Say yes or no. Think and tell me. You remember our discussion on compensatory mechanisms in hypovolemic shock? Yes or no? Do you remember our discussion on compensatory mechanisms in hypovolemic shock? What did I give a name for that compensatory mechanism? Neurohumoral compensatory mechanism. Okay. So which are the hormones which are increasing when there was a decrease in blood volume? Hemorrhage was there. Was ADH there? Was ADH there in the list? ADH was there in the paper. People are now quickly looking back in their books. Oh, ADH was there. Okay. So this slide will tell you that even though ADH is always trying to defend the tonicity of the ECF, the osmolality of the ECF, it is trying to maintain at around 285 milliosmoles. If there is any change in the volume without a change in the tonicity, then also ADH is going to be increased. This happens in hemorrhage. When a person loses sudden volume of blood due to a road traffic accident, blood volume will fall. The osmolality will not change immediately unless the capillary fluid shift mechanism happens and the hypodilution of the blood is going to take place. That will take some time. Even before that happens, we see that ADH secretion is going to increase. So if you have not understood all this, you just remember one statement. In the case of an emergency, volume overrides tonicity or ADH secretion. What is that statement? In the case of an emergency, volume overrides tonicity. So if there is a change in volume, volume is decreasing without any change in the tonicity, then also ADH secretion is going to increase. Okay. So we'll quickly finish off the ADH thing. So this is a summary of the factors which are going to think. If you not understood those graphs and all that, just remember hypertonicity, osmoreceptors will shrink and signals ADH secretion increases. Hypovolemia, low pressure baroreceptors, they will send signals ADH secretion in. Other factors are there. One very important factor is surgery. In surgery, there is hypovolemia and dehydration. Surgeon has operated, there is some blood loss, patient is not drinking, IV fluids are going, but that may not be enough. Stress of surgery is there. Lot of ADH secretion in surgery. That may cause dilutional hyponatremia. In surgery, you may, in a patient after surgery, immediately after surgery, if there is hyponatremia, please think of this physiological response of the body, that it is a stress plus the dehydration plus no fluids going in orally, that is causing ADH to be secreted, which will reabsorb the water and cause a dilutional hyponatremia, which has to be corrected. Okay. Okay. Now we spoke about the source, the chemistry, the receptors, the mechanism of action on the target cell by the cyclic AMP and calcium, the physiological actions of vasoconstriction and water reabsorption, the metabolism, and the factors which are regulating. Again and again and again, I'm stressing the factors regulating ADH secretion are slightly different. You have to be little careful here. One point to remember: what overrides what? What is
Volume over.
Overrides tonicity.
volume overrides tonicity. ఇంకేం మిగిలిందండి?
Tonicity.
ADH మీద ADH in the discussion on ADH, what is remaining? क्या बचा है? Applied aspects. There is no point in talking about all this unless you talk about the applied aspects. No point in reading physiology. This hormone is acting like that, like this, secreted from here, that, use all that, unless you know how to apply that knowledge. Okay. So when it comes to I'm looking for one blank slide. Okay, I'll go to this one and somebody can help me also. Okay. Already start చేసేసామా? ఆగలేవా? Who's there? Okay. So you can have any hormone, two abnormalities. Okay. So you can have increased secretion. Somebody write there. Okay. You divide it into two, ADH. You divide it into two parts, and on one side you write. Please help me here. You can continue. Increased secretion. Other one is decreased secretion. Okay. So this increased secretion of ADH is called as SIADH. SIADH. Can anybody tell me what is that full form?
Syndrome of
inappropriate ADH.
One word you all missed. You all missed one word.
Of antidiuretic.
Hypersecretion.
Syndrome of inappropriate hypersecretion of ADH. Called as syndrome of inappropriate hypersecretion of ADH. SIADH stands for syndrome of inappropriate hypersecretion of ADH. ADH secretion is very high. It is not appropriate to the situation of the body. There is no hypertonicity. There is no hypovolemia. No factor is there which should be causing the ADH secretion, but still it is being secreted. Okay, so we see this syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion due to two causes, mainly two causes. There are many other causes, but basically two: cerebral disorders and lung cancers. Some cerebral disorders, any tumors can cause the excess ADH secretion. Lung cancers like oat cell carcinoma, small cell carcinoma of the lungs, that can also cause ADH excess secretion. Some people have argued lung cancer is blocking the vagus nerve going from the low pressure baroreceptors. What is the other name for the low pressure baroreceptors?
Cardiopulmonary
receptors. What do they monitor?
Volume change.
They monitor volume, is it not? So there is no change in volume, but the impulses which have been going from them are interrupted, and that is cause they are pressing on that nerves, and then they are causing some problem, and that is causing excessive secretion. But still, even if there is no interruption, we see that some of the lung tumors, for reasons we don't know, they start secreting excess of ADH. Okay, so syndrome of inappropriate hypersecretion of ADH is caused due to either some cerebral conditions or the lung condition. Okay, now what happens is there is a volume expansion because water is retained excessively, and aldosterone secretion is inhibited. Excess hypervolemia will inhibit aldosterone secretion. So there is going to be loss of sodium. There is hypervolemia with hyponatremia in syndrome of inappropriate hypersecretion of ADH. Excess loss of salt in the urine. If it is due to a cerebral disorder, it is called as cerebral salt wasting. I hope you're writing down. Cerebral condition in the brain causing SIADH, excess loss of salt because there is increase in volume, no aldosterone secretion, sodium gets excreted in large quantities in the urine. Cerebral salt wasting. Lung condition causing excess salt wasting. దాని నామకరణం ఎలా చేస్తారు?
Lung salt wasting.
Lung salt.
Pulmonary salt.
Okay, good. Doesn't matter. It's called as pulmonary salt wasting. Okay, the syndrome of inappropriate hypersecretion of ADH.
Lung salt wasting.
How will you treat this condition?
Demiclocycline.
Yeah, you give. Yeah, very good. You give that antibiotic called as demiclocycline, which will block the action of ADH on the V2 receptors in the kidney. Okay, that is demiclocycline for SADH. Decreased secretion. So decreased secretion. ADH decreased secretion. ఏమంటారండి దాన్ని?
Diabetes.
Called as diabetes insipidus. Okay, central Raima, whoever it is helping me out, please can you write in the center of the slide. Diabetes insipidus. So in olden days, the Greek had noticed. It was noticed in long back among Indians. The problem with our Indians was they are not very well known to share the knowledge. They used to tell it into their students' ears. They are not like me telling it to everybody on the internet. So maybe it was already known there. Hey, so Greeks వాళ్ళదంతా బాగా documented కదా. So they're telling olden people knew there are two types of conditions in which there is an excess urine volume output. In one condition, the urine was tasteless, and in the other condition, the urine tasted sweet. Please don't ask me how they came to that conclusion. Okay. Anyway, so they have observed two conditions. One where there was very large volume of dilute urine being passed, which was tasteless. That they called it as diabetes insipidus. And the other one where the sugar was being excreted around 6 liters, not as large a volume as in diabetes insipidus. What is that diabetes called as?
Diabetes
mellitus.
Diabetes mellitus. What is the cause for diabetes mellitus? Deficiency of insulin, either an absolute deficiency or a relative deficiency of insulin. The diabetes insipidus is due to deficiency of ADH. Okay. Now this diabetes insipidus, you can divide it into again two types. Central diabetes insipidus. Two, you can divide it into two. Central diabetes insipidus. Okay. Central diabetes insipidus. What is the other one?
Nephrogenic.
Nephrogenic.
Very good, very good. The other one is nephrogenic. Nephrogenic diabetes. ఎందుకమ్మా రాసుకోబోతోంది ఇద్దరు పోయి రాస్తున్నావా straight. Okay, so as the name itself tells you, this central diabetes insipidus is due to some problem in the brain, in the central nervous system, and the nephrogenic diabetes insipidus is due to some problem in the kidneys. Okay, so we'll talk about central diabetes insipidus first. So central diabetes insipidus, what are the problems in the brain which can cause the central diabetes insipidus? So if you have understood the anatomy and the connection and all that, you will be understanding by now that if there is any problem in the hypothalamus near the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei, if there is any problem in the connection, what is that connection between the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary? Called as
Hypothalamo-hypophyseal canal.
Hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract.
Hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. Yeah, if the tract is damaged, or if there is any problem in the posterior pituitary, or there is any problem in the gene which codes for the prepropresophysin. There is a gene, any protein gene will be there, is it not? All these can cause this central diabetes insipidus. So they have seen that in 100 patients with central diabetes insipidus, 30% of the people will be having a neoplasia. Neoplasia means cancer, either a primary or a metastatic. What do you mean by primary? It is there in the brain, in the hypothalamus itself. What do you mean by metastatic? It's a secondary. Somewhere else the tumor is, it has come and spread to the brain. 30% of the cases is because of cancer, neoplasia. 30% of the cases is due to head injury. There was some damage to the brain and something went wrong. In the diabetes, this ADH secretion has decreased. Yeah. In 30% of the cases, it is idiopathic. We don't know the cause. So how much it is? 30% neoplasia, 30% after head injury, 30% is we don't know idiopathy. What percent is remaining? 10% could be due to some problem in the blood vessels, vascular abnormalities, vascular supply to the posterior pituitary or the hypothalamus, or it could be due to infections, or it could be due to some systemic disorders like sarcoidosis, or it could be due to some problems in the gene. Okay, so if you don't remember these percentages, don't bother. Just remember that in central diabetes insipidus, there is some problem in the hypothalamus or the hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract, or in the posterior pituitary, and that is causing a decrease in ADH secretion. Nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, there is some problem in the kidneys. The kidneys fail to respond to ADH. There is no problem in secretion of ADH. Circulating level of ADH may be normal. In fact, it may be high also. But in spite of a normal or most often a high levels of circulating ADH, we see that the kidneys are not responding. Yeah. So what could be the reason?
Genetic defect.
Tell me what? Yeah. There is a problem in the V2 receptor. Just divide it. nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. Please write the full form. Nephrogenic diabetes insipidus is to two reasons. Yes, V2 receptors are abnormal. Okay. What else can be abnormal? You can have abnormality.
Aquaporins.
Aquaporins, yes, very good. The aquaporin can be up. This V2 receptor abnormality, what type of genetic disorder is it? Anybody has read?
X-linked recessive.
X-linked recessive disorder. Nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, due to abnormalities in the V2 receptors, is an X-linked recessive disorder. Okay, because the gene for the V2 receptor also a protein. Protein means there must be a gene. That gene is present on the X chromosome. So this is an X-linked recessive disorder. What is the characteristic of an X-linked recessive disorder?
Females are carriers. Males are affected.
Ladies college kabatti first you will tell females are carriers. Okay. The most important point you will tell last. Okay. What is the most other thing? Females are carriers.
Males are
Males
the most affected.
Males are the sufferers.
Most
affected.
Most 99.99% of the times males are the sufferers. I can't resist my usual dialogue. Story of our lives. Okay. Anyway. So can you give me an example of other X-linked recessive disorders? Hemophilia. Especially that we have factor 8 and 9 deficiency. Then red-green color blindness. Yes, somebody told red-green color blindness. One more.
Sickle cell anemia.
Sickle cell anemia. అవునా ఏ బుక్ లో ఇచ్చినారో ఒకసారి వెరిఫై చేయండి సంథింగ్ ఇన్ మజిల్
Muscular
which muscular dystrophy
Duchenne
DEU let me talk DEUCHENNE apostrophe is Duchenne muscular dystrophy. That is also a X-linked recessive disorder. So what will be the signs and symptoms of a patient? Whether it is nephrogenic or whether it is central, we'll come to that point afterwards. In both, the signs and symptoms will be two things. Both start with P.
Polyuria
And polydipsia.
Polyuria and polydipsia. In fact, polyuria means passage of excess volume of urine. Large volume of urine is being passed, frequent urination. Polyuria means excessive thirst. Excessive thirst is called as polyuria. Okay. So it is the thirst which is keeping the blood volume and ECF volume normal. If for any reason in a patient with diabetes insipidus, his thirst mechanism is gone, then he will end up in serious problems. He will go in for hypovolemia and all that. Okay. Anyway, so polyuria, polydipsia, passage of a large volume of dilute urine, specific gravity is low. So what is the reason for the passage of the large volume of dilute urine? There is no dash of water.
Facultative.
Very good. There is no facultative reabsorption of water. In diabetes, and there is a deficiency of ADH. In diabetes mellitus, what is the reason for polyuria? And there it will be 12 to, here it will be 12 to 15 liters, sometime even 20 liters of urine he may be passing. Whereas in diabetes mellitus, it will be around 5 to 6 liters. Okay. And the specific gravity of the urine will be more. The glucose will be there in the urine. If it is uncontrolled, really uncontrolled, definitely you will have glycosuria. And what is the cause for the polyuria?
Sir, more glucose makes it hyperosmotic. That's why it tracks water.
Yeah, very good. You tell me in 2 words. Dash, dash. One starts with O, other starts with D.
Osmotic.
They will ask you what are the differences between diabetes insipidus and diabetes mellitus. Okay. So in diabetes mellitus, the polyuria is because of osmotic diuresis. And what is acting as the osmotically active substance? Glucose. This glucose is being filtered, not reabsorbed, because the TMG is crossed. Glucose is there in the tubules that will start drawing water from the surrounding interstitial fluid and the capillaries, and the the urine volume is going to increase. Okay, so simple. In diabetes insipidus, there is no ADH, so there is no facultative reabsorption of water, so there is polyuria and polydipsia. In diabetes mellitus, there is excess glucose load, there is hyperglycemia, the glucose lot is getting filtered but not reabsorbed. Glucose starts acting as an osmotically active substance, so there is osmotic diuresis. You remember that word, osmotic diuresis in diabetes mellitus. Okay, right. The treatment of diabetes insipidus. So obviously, you can give desmopressin, but the desmopressin will be useful only in
Central diabetes.
Yeah, very good. The desmopressin is going to be useful in central diabetes insipidus. Okay, so in nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, we really don't know what to do. So whatever you do, kidneys are not going to respond to the desmopressin or synthetic vasopressin, whatever you're giving. In fact, there is a way you can differentiate between the two. Say a patient comes to you with diabetes insipidus. You give him desmopressin. Okay, you give him desmopressin, and his symptoms will improve. And if the kidneys are responding, he or she will if it is okay, he or she will start also excreting aquaporin 2 in the urine. That is one way they say you can differentiate. Even in normal people, when ADH acts on the kidneys, normal people also in the urine, they are secreting aquaporin 2 channels. Okay, so that is one way of differentiating. Anyway, roll number 13. Don't worry, don't cry. I'll stop the class. Huh? Okay, so you understood about diabetes, the ADH applied aspects. Two things for any hormone: excess secretion. Excess secretion is called as syndrome of inappropriate hypersecretion of ADH. Cerebral causes, it is called as cerebral salt wasting. You have dilutional hyponatremia. A lot of salt is being excreted out in the urine because aldosterone secretion stops. So the brain tumors or the lung cancers can cause excess secretion of ADH. Whereas in the case of hyposecretion, like I told, you have two types: central diabetes insipidus and nephrogenic or peripheral diabetes insipidus. Central diabetes insipidus, I told you the reason, either in the hypothalamus or the tract or the posterior pituitary, there can be a problem. Nephrogenic, either the V2 receptors are gone or the aquaporins are gone. Aquaporin deficiency is an autosomal disorder. Okay, so the treatment is you give desmopressin. Obviously, desmopressin will be of use in central diabetes insipidus. Nephrogenic, it will be of partial use. Some of the receptors may respond. You give very high doses, whatever few remaining V2 receptors are there, they may respond, but unlikely. Okay, so you have a difference between diabetes insipidus and diabetes mellitus. You have to remember what for diabetes mellitus? Insulin is not there, sugar, osmotic diuresis. And glucose is the one which is behaving like an osmotically active substance. Okay. So you please read up in detail, more than in detail, we have discussed about the ADH. Please read up about neuroendocrine reflex for oxytocin. What is the meaning of this word neuroendocrine reflex? What do you understand by that word? Okay, so you have two things. Why the actions of oxytocin on milk ejection and parturition? Why they are called as neuroendocrine reflex? Okay, and what is the role of oxytocin in non-pregnant women? Okay, and what is the role of oxytocin in males? What is the role of
In
oxytocin?
transport of
Yes,
sperms.
please read up about this and come. And the circumventricular organs are organs which are present outside the blood-brain barrier. You have area postrema, organum vasculosum of lamina terminalis. The posterior pituitary, they say, is also outside, and then subfornical organ SFO. These are all the areas present outside. Please read up today. Very easy when you are listening. Please read up today and just fine tune the notes whatever you are taking.